Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into this spooky cutie coloring book by Coco Wayo. I've picked out this really cute Mad Scientist page, but we're going to do something a little different with it. Usually I just color for fun and don't really have a plan of what I want to do, but today I wanted to challenge myself. This is my first time attempting to do a light effect. I already had this yellow stain in the middle of the page. It was a bleed through from the previous page that I colored, and I wanted to have a way to hide that. So I'm hoping that doing this light effect will blend in that stain, but also allow me to do it in a fun or creative way. The plan is to have this cauldron glowing with a bright radioactive green, and then to make it really pop, I'm going to do the rest of the page in only gray tones. I've always been a bit intimidated by shadows and light sources, so consider this a learning experience. I'm gonna sort of play around and figure it out as I go, and maybe you are like me and you're needing to learn, or if you have some helpful tips, then please drop them into the comments. So the first rule of lighting is to identify the source. In this page, our light isn't coming from the window or from the moon, right? It's not coming from a lamp, which makes it, I felt a little bit easier for me to just go, it's coming from the cauldron and the light is going up. So I needed to make sure that everything in one section was green, and it was very clear that as you're going, right, the closest items are going to be brighter, and then farther back you'll get darker. Because the light is inside of the pot, you know, the brightest green needs to be at the rim, on his face, and maybe at the front of the jars. So I started with the yellow marker that I had to kind of blend with that stain that was already, the bleed through that was already on the page. And then I took the lightest green that I had, I'm only using 3 colors there, and I put that over the yellow and just had this whole base of green. And then I can build on with different colors or layering my markers to create depth. lot of what I had to think about as I was going through this is how would the light play off of objects that are stacked in front of each other. So making sure that there were shadows if an object was behind something else, that it might be darker, and things that were in the forefront would be lighter. And it sounds simple, but when you actually try to do it, or when you're not comfortable doing it, it can feel very intimidating. And then I'm doing everything green, so trying to create that depth while using the same color tone could be a little bit tricky, but also I thought that maybe this would be easier than trying to do a lot of different colors and trying to create that as well. I just kind of kept telling myself, how do you think these objects are really laid out? Where do you think the scientist is? And what just looks visually right to me while I was doing it? A lot of it was just, let's just see if it'll go there. And if I don't like it, well, here we are. Or maybe trying to add a darker color or a lighter color, blend it in. But it was a lot of experimentation, which I think was great. So once I got through all of the green, I needed to move on to the gray area, basically the rest of the page. And I think the important thing was creating contrast. It could look really flat or really two-dimensional, so contrast is key. I'm using 3 different gray markers, and I think that'll help already because the markers are different colors, but then if you also include that you can layer one on top of each other, then it can give you a nice range. And this is also right, making sure that I paid attention to where the light is coming from. The cauldron was sort of in the middle of the page, so the light is going upwards and casting maybe a glow around it. So if you think of the glow being in that middle space, objects that are below the cauldron are going to have shadows towards the bottom, where the items that are higher up in the picture will have a shadow towards the top or the sides, just depending on the relation that it's in. I also wanted to make sure that I added shadow in relation to how the items were sitting on the table. So instead of just looking at the object and going, oh, throw a shadow here, it's also, well, it's sitting on this thing, so there also needs to be shadows beneath the candy. There needs to be shadows beneath the cauldron by the cakes. It's really about how do we take what is something flat and make it a little bit more. I also try to do this with the candy that I colored, of how do you make it appear a little bit more round and not just a flat surface. So a lot of experimentation in this picture, but I think that once it starts to click, it will really take my coloring to a whole other level. Really wanted to make sure that the green looked like it was glowing, right? If you can't sell that effect, then the whole picture doesn't really work. So I wanted to make sure that areas like the back of the shelves were the darkest gray that I could get, and really sell that there's a dark shadowy area and then this light that's coming through. And so some of that took like taking that darker color and going over it a couple of times until I really got a shade that I thought looked nice. I'm not going for black here, but you want it to be perceived dark and have a big difference between the lightest one to the darkest one. And if you're trying this at home for the first time, like I am, don't be afraid of adding those dark shadows or dark areas in there. I did cover the whole gray area with the lightest one first, and I think that helped kind of give me the base look and then gave me more confidence to build off of that without just seeing a white page. But I think what really sells it sometimes is the darker colors. And this, while it is a cute picture, it is a little spooky, and so don't be afraid to get away from all the pastel colors and add some more rich tones into what you're doing. I also wanted to leave some specific areas white, so like the skull or highlights on the candy canes, and it was more, I didn't want to have to go back through it with a white gel pen. I really wanted it to kind of be part of the image. So that was also something I thought about going forward, was what did I want to leave specifically white versus what would need to be gray. It really is those details that can sell the whole effect. For my first time ever attempting to do this light source effect, I'm really happy with how it turned out. I think I approached it with caution, but as I got into it, it was really just intuition and kind of just taking a step back every once in a while and looking at it, saying, no, I think it needs something here, it needs something there. It's not perfect, and I'm not expecting it to be, especially for my first time, but I do feel a little bit more comfortable, and I think that this will help me as I continue on with other pages of being more confident in adding shadows and understanding that almost every image has a light source somewhere and how that can impact the objects around it. I really like how this green and gray play off of each other, and it just really pops, and it's exactly what I wanted to achieve here. If you've been scared to try the lighting effect or any other kind of trendy or cool thing that you found, I highly recommend that you do it. This was just, one color in gray. It was very simple, and I think that was a good way to approach this. I thought about what would be the least intimidating way for me to tackle something like this, and again, choosing like 2 colors, but 9 markers total, not even that, at 7. That was perfect. It really, sometimes the absence of choice is super helpful. I really enjoyed doing this, and I just love how it turned out. I can't wait to really get more experimental in my coloring and see what I can do beyond just this. I hope that you enjoyed this piece, and thank you for hanging out with me today. Let me know in the comments what's a coloring technique you've been nervous to try, and maybe we can tackle it together in the next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.